There's so many.
That's not a dumb question. It's a fucking question.
It is a dumb question because there are so many potential things you'd have to consider about like what society looked like when we've got 50% of the population voting for fucking Hassan. He made these mistakes. Didn't he? Didn't he befriend fucking Vosh and Hassan and all these people like for quite a while because they masked on quite well with him? I made that mistake for a long fucking time. I had to be a socialist or a self-proclaimed communist for fucking 10 years before I realized how mental these people were. Before I started making content online and streaming and absorbing it the entire like all fucking day. That's when I noticed things were wrong. It took a long time. So yeah, I don't think like I don't know why. Again, I keep saying this to you guys, chat. Like assume good faith until proven otherwise. And I think you're assuming bad faith on Pisco before you, when you haven't been proven like otherwise on good faith. Yeah, sorry, hi.
Hey, sorry, yeah, I'm on my phone. How do I sound? Is this tolerable?
Yeah, I'll tolerate you. Yeah.
I'll tolerate you too, my socialist brother.
Fuck you. Listen, okay. Did you hear me talk about Clement Attlee earlier?
I saw you had described him as something like a social democrat that didn't really do socialism, but that's about it.
Okay, that part's not particularly relevant.
Okay.
I think it's fine to call Clement Attlee a socialist, right? Because I'm from fucking Europe, and how many? I'm not going to turn over 120 years of social democrats calling themselves socialists, or people who do nationalization and calling that socialism, even though they have no intention of ever doing a Marxist-Leninist Soviet shithole, right? Yeah, you believe in that, like nationalizing healthcare and all that, and you want to call yourself a socialist? Like, yeah, you are. That's the use of the word. That's its meaning. The thing that I think is going wrong with this whole interaction is, and maybe Hutch feels this as well. Did you didn't get the bit when I spoke about Clement Attlee and his attitude towards communism, did you?
No, but I understand that Clement Attlee and this is the history of all Oceanic and European labor parties, where they all, to varying degrees, go to great lengths to distance themselves from Bolshevism and essentially the contemporary Marxist-Leninist movements of the time. Like one example that I thought was particularly funny was a lot of Labor Party manifestos from Oceania and Europe. They'll focus, like, we believe in democracy, like, we're not Bolshevists. The Australian manifesto from, I think, like 1929 basically said, like, we are not the socialists of Bolshevism or something like that, right? Because they had this kind of constant struggle of association even 100 years ago.
But they were also still nonetheless distinguished from liberals, because the Liberal Party definitely didn't want to nationalize the health service or the railways or progressive taxes or anything else, right?
Yeah. Liberals and conservatives back then were, properly, there was the neoliberal turn for the socialist movements, but then conservatives became a lot less completely insane about, maybe we should have things like some welfare payments. But back then, yeah, they were really crazy.
I think the problem is that Clement Attlee, he also had like a mini McCarthyist era. Like, at least the closest that the UK had to McCarthyism was under Attlee, when he formed the Cabinet Committee on Subversive Activity, and he got a bunch of people who were Communist Party members or even suspected Communist Party members, often erroneously, and he got them fired. Like, loads of innocent people lost their jobs because of the overreach here. And obviously there was never, I don't think, even back in the 30s when Attlee was saying nice things about the Soviet Union and their economy, the communists always hated him, right? He was a social fascist to them, and he didn't like them either, and he made it very clear. Like, he basically hunted them.
I understand all that history. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think this is where there's an issue. Fuck, I'm repeating myself, but I'm going to do it anyway. When I argue with people over Israel, often these debates present themselves as like issues over war conduct, and people think that I'm too soft on their war conduct. And then I can give them a million examples of times that I've shat on IDF war conduct, whether it's in this war or in the last 100 years. Like, I know quite a lot about most IDF atrocities in history. The problem is that I don't think they're actually, but that doesn't seem to connect with them. And I think the problem that they have is it's not actually that I don't talk about the conduct or they don't call it out, or even that they think I'm too soft on it. I think the issue is because ultimately, for all I don't like about the IDF, I don't want them destroyed. And the people who come at me with these debates about conduct, they're not actually debates about conduct. They want the IDF destroyed. And I don't convey that Israel is my enemy to a degree that those guys want me to, because I don't think they're my enemy. And I think that's the problem. And I think the issue that we got here is that although I guess like you and Pisco and all that seem to have no time for Vanguardism or MLs and all that, I think maybe Hutch is getting this as well. They're not getting it communicated clearly enough that you see these people as enemies, or maybe you don't. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, I mean that's pretty. Yeah, I mean that's pretty clearly the kind of main disagreement. I mean, I think that and I understood that, and I understand that now. I think that I guess my general argument in that regard is like, okay, it's mostly just like, okay. I mean, I guess like I don't. I'm not like usually the type. I mean, certainly there are some things that trigger me. And I'll get a lot more animated and make it a lot more clear how strongly I feel about something in certain circumstances, but I guess I just don't have, for the most part, I guess I don't have like the energy for that. Like I think that, for instance, if I had like yelled at the Vanguard and called them dumb fucks for saying Biden didn't even try with student loan forgiveness, I think that like single clip would have prevented at least me almost entirely from being involved in this like supposed controversy with how we handled the Vanguard interview. Because it seems like what people want, like you said, is like that very sort of like stark, like separation between the two, and not for you to just say, like you said, like, oh, well, I just disagree. Like, no, I think Biden actually did do this, and have some pushback in that regard, which I guess I do understand intellectually, but it just doesn't seem like I think that my general mindset, especially with regard to like MLs, right, is that there's such a fringe kind of portion of the left that I don't really find it. I guess I just don't find it very necessary to like take some kind of extremely proactive like oppositional stance to them, even though I do oppose them, like you said. But it's like, they're MLs. It's like, dude, this is like 1 in 10,000 people or something. Like, I don't know. I just don't know like how big of a deal they are, basically.
Do you feel that in our space of like alt political media, do you feel the same about them, or do you think they have more influence than just like 1 in 10,000?
Yeah, I think if we're gonna narrow the space to essentially online politics, like let's say like left of center online politics, then I would say that I guess I wouldn't necessarily use the word ML, but like generally speaking, like anti-democrat socialist media, like Brianna Joy Gray, Hassan Piker, people like that are very like disproportionately represented, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah, I think and obviously that's our space, right?
Yeah, online. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and this is it's really frustrating because I feel like what I'm getting from this debate is that like people can't really find a term for what the issue is, because calling it just socialist is a really retarded thing from Stephen. I think like just calling them socialist is not really going to encompass it, because again, I think even he knows this. It's not even if they're not doing it over the economy. Like there's the Vanguard with all the fantasy about bullying Manchin into a 15 minimum wage or whatever, but it's not even that. It's like if they're not arguing about the economy, they're also dead weighting the Democrats on Palestine, right? Like because everything is a purity test over genocide and defunding the entire state of Israel, or maybe even going further and trying to like invade the country, as Hassan was saying. But yeah, I think there's this intersection of that like socialist like absolutism and also the campism on the left alt media that I think is just like, if it's not a threat to democratic success now, it will be in 5 or 10 years, because it's everywhere in alt media, and it's like it's just a cancer. I think it like, and I don't think them saying once or twice a year that there's a harm reduction, one is worse than the other, I don't think that undoes the rest of the year where they are just like dragging any left opposition to MAGA or anything else down.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think, I could buy the hypothesis that, if you look at the polling for Gen Z and kind of the spaces that Gen Z and Gen Alpha kind of are operating within, I could buy the thesis that, oh, well, Econoboy, you might be right now that it's not that big of a deal, but, in 10 years, maybe instead of, 1% of self-identified socialists being Marxist-Leninists, maybe it's, 25% or something like that. It's like it's like 1% of the entire country or something like that. It's like, I could imagine something like that happening. And insofar as that does happen, well then, I think I would get a lot more, I guess, militant in my opposition to them. I mean, because I think that, like, for instance, I have a much greater kind of like visceral reaction to like Trump and like Trump supporters, because they're clearly, as a movement, just like so substantially more. I mean, like, it's like trivially true. Like the Trump movement is so substantially more powerful. Similarly with like on Live and Learn, right? Like a lot of I think pretty much we've had like essentially wall to wall, like positive, like, oh my goodness, like, let's vote for the Democrats. Let's go. We got a lot of enthusiasm. Like we were pretty optimistic. And then when we lost and we had to adjust our priors, it was like, man, yeah, like the Democrats, this and that, like they really need to adjust. And so we've had like more like wall to wall criticism of a lot of the current like establishment, more like tilt moderate leadership. But again, that's just because like those are the actually existing people that are brokering the power arrangements in our society, right? It's not that like if you listed out ideologies on paper, we would obviously agree more with Marxist Leninists than with establishment Democrats. Like, no, like people have asked, like, would you vote for Hassan or Richie Torres? Well, like, no shit, I'd vote for Richie Torres. But I mean, it's like, obviously Richie Torres is a significantly more relevant power broker in society than Hassan Piker, if I had to guess. So
yeah, I don't know. It's to me, I think it matters in the sense that they are a disproportionate representation in the alt media space, and that I do see it bleeding through. I think one of the reasons that Biden came off as so sometimes like incoherent on Israel-Palestine was because it felt like he was trying to appease, like, to do something to respond to the far left response to him, but also trying to balance that with just reality. And then you get really confusing policies about like talking about getting fucking 400 trucks in every day because like of some misunderstanding with UN data and shit like that. Like, yeah, I don't know. It just worries me. But I feel like we're in a position now where like you guys, because I'm not American, I don't really give a fuck, but you guys are like the SPD, and I guess like the KPD is sitting there thinking like, can we make use of this, or these guys, or not? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously, like I think like I think to the extent that like a Brianna Joy Gray type, like where she's like, no, like literally it's like the morally right, strategically correct. She thinks it's like by essentially any axis, like it's the correct thing to vote against the Democratic Party and to vote for like the Green Party and like organizations like that and stuff. And it's like, I've had basically no patience for stuff like that. Like that's just stupid. That's completely dumb. I would never invite Brianna Joy Gray to be a part of the kind of like inner party of, Democratic spaces. I wouldn't want her to be part of, like, the only context where I would want to interact with Brianna Joy Gray is, like either like it would either be like oppositional, like we would have a debate, or I would insert at least something of a debate. Like even if Brianna Joy Gray invited me onto her show, oh, hey, like we got a Common Boy here. He wrote this article about this and we're here to talk to him about it. Like he wrote about like socializing public wealth or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, yeah. And Brianna Joy Gray, like, hey, just to be clear, like this is why you should vote for Democrats. Cause like literally the only chance that we have to do this is by electing like DSA members to be members of Congress or something, right? Like similar to how like I think Pisco does a pretty good job of that, where like he'll get interviewed by Crystal and Sagar, and he'll make it a point to be like, hey, Sagar, by the way, you were wrong about immigration, right? Like he'll just he'll openly say that in the interview. And I think that is like, at the very least, it's one way to address the criticism that you've levied of like, you don't necessarily want to like normalize or like allow Sagar to like pepper over his complete insanity on the issue of immigration and Trump. And so even though the topic didn't necessarily, it was like more of an interview for Pisco was more proactive and like, hey, Sagar, by the way, like you were kind of an idiot on this issue, right? And kind of forcing Sagar to openly be like, yep, no, I was totally wrong about that. Or at the very least, get him to try and like waffle on a defense. Like, I think that that's kind of how I would generally try to interact with those people insofar as they would platform me and as they become more relevant. I don't know what you think about that general strategy, but I think that kind of just fits my type of personality, I guess, and how I would think about those interactions.
I don't know about you in particular, or with the. I didn't see Pisco talking to Crystal and Sagar. I do know that if I was getting congratulated or like commended by Hassan for making his opinions look a bit more chill than they actually are, that I feel like that would maybe worry me a little bit. But especially if it was over like what was it over re-education camps or which I think is. Yeah,
Yeah.
he definitely
Well,
meant
I don't.
camps,
I
and if
mean,
he didn't, then everyone in his audience who heard it did. Yeah, I don't know.
yeah, that's a Pisco thing. Like, I don't really agree with how like Pisco and I haven't really spoken about it, but I don't agree with. I can't see who else joined, but welcome. I don't really agree with how Pisco kind of framed the re-education camp issue, just in general, because yeah, I think that Hassan seems to have like more extreme views in that regard. At least like, I guess like I think Pisco's ultimate point is like you're ultimately operating on conjecture because what he actually said is this. But I disagree in part that I think, you know, it's probably sensible to make some leaps when you're assuming what someone's true intention is. But I think that where I would disagree is just like the general controversy with me specifically has been, oh, like, you know, you didn't essentially scream at the Vanguard, so you're basically a Marxist-Leninist. You're basically a tanky sweeper. You know, like
Yeah, it's not about screaming. And again, I'm trying to characterize like where I think other people are coming from on this because I don't remember it well enough to go fully into it. But like, I don't think it's about screaming because the tone arguments are stupid. It's more just about. I think the thing it seems like they're trying to communicate here, and that Hutch seemed like he was trying to communicate was just that it just it didn't come off like you saw them as like the enemy that someone like Hutch thinks that they should be seen as. And I think you can do that without shouting, right? Like you can calmly make someone feel like an enemy.
yeah, and again, I don't know if like I guess I don't know that I would characterize people like the Vanguard as quote unquote the enemy, right? But I just don't know that I would characterize like okay, it's like maybe like an enemy of my enemy is my friend kind of type situation where like obviously again like I don't think that people like I don't think like the Vanguard guys would be productive like members of the strategic coalition or anything like that. Like I feel like I've made that at least somewhat clear. I think that I guess Josiah gets in trouble with that a little bit because he said something like, you know, he thinks that the Vanguard are more proximate allies than people like Rob Noor or something like that there was like something like that he said. And I mean, I think that that probably is true that in terms of like who could you sit down and strategize with more in terms of accomplishing your political goals? Well, it probably would be the Vanguard and not Rob Noor, but that's obviously like quite an extreme contrast between the two. Generally speaking, like yeah, like I don't think that the Vanguard should be invited into conversations like that because, you know, yeah, like they do seem to have like a bit of derangement with regards to like a lot of Democrats, right? And I have a lot of criticisms as well, but I mean, there is a difference between criticism and derangement, obviously.
Do you think? Sorry, just someone in chat saying they vote Democrat. That's a good start. Do you think? Do you see the Vanguard as either like potential allies or enemies, or like deadweight, or something other than those three? Like, how do you actually view them in like a word?
I would say a useful like tool. I would put like Hassan and Vanguard and Brianna Joy Gray as like useful tool. I would say like again, I wouldn't if I was like running a presidential campaign, I wouldn't the way that I would interact with them would be like I would go on their show and just talk about the campaign, debate them, you know, try to reach out to their audience. And I think that that's like I think that's generally an opinion that most establishment Democrats at this point feel, not necessarily about people like the Vanguard, but like if an established Democrat is willing to say, I'll go on to like Steve Bannon's podcast or I'll go on to like Joe Rogan's podcast, not because I feel like obviously I want to ally with Joe Rogan or Steve Bannon, but because it's important to show a Democratic face to a generally oppositional group or like audience. Like that's good. Like I want like if Charlie Kirk invited me as like a Democratic politician to go like debate him or something, like I would 100% accept that, right? And so similar with like Hassan, it's like, yeah, like I think that if you're like running for Congress, like I would totally do an interview with Hassan and I would try to, you know, make it a point to be like, yeah, it's important that your audience knows like voting for, like it's important to vote for Democrats, right? Like Republicans, it's not a trivial thing. I understand Democrats can be disappointing and Democrats can be this or that or whatever, but it's like, this is like the coalition that's clearly the correct people to vote for, you know, plain and simple. So I think that's probably how I would kind of think about like this like very very like oppositional like left-wing media space.
I wonder if they see Dems as more of a useful tool than they are to the Dems. Like, I don't know if you saw Bernie Sanders on Novara Media talking to them. The only big clip that spread around that they grabbed from that interview was Ash Sarkar asking Bernie like 3 times if what's happening is a genocide in Gaza. And Bernie at this point was already calling for an arms embargo. Like, you've got every fucking policy concession that you want, and she's still purity testing him on genocide. Like, that to me is kind of fucked. And I think in a case like that, I think even with someone like Bernie, who is as far left as Dems get, right? He was useful to them, and they just hamstrung him. Like, yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of those weird things. Like, I don't, politicians just feel the need to like, obviously lefties feel the need to purity test, and politicians feel the need to be like wiffly waffly on issues like that. Like, if Bernie doesn't think it's a genocide, he should just say like, no, I don't. But every time he's asked about it, he's always like, well, that's a legal term, and what Israel's doing is terrible. It's like, dude, just say no.
Well, because you know what happens if he just says no, though, right? Like, because to them, like, saying like it's the proxy issue. If you say no, that's like you're dead, right? Whereas you're like,
yeah, sure, but like, it's just like Bernie should be. That's almost like, it's like the criticism you have for like me and the Vanguard. It's almost like what I'm saying about Bernie. It's just like, to the extent that like a meaningfully large portion of your base would abandon you if you just flatly said no to the question of, is Israel a genocide? Is Israel committing a genocide in the Gaza Strip? It's like, okay, well then it's like, Bernie, you're 85 fucking years old, man. Who cares at this point? Just fucking say it with your fucking chest. This is your last term in the U.S. Senate anyway. I don't really understand the point of being wiffly waffly when you're like 85 years old and you're like, this is your last hurrah in politics, right? And so I would just want like politicians to be more direct in general.
What do you think? What do you think Navarro would have done with that clip if he had just said nah, fuck you, like, or just no? Well, sorry.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, yeah, like I'm sure that like if you don't, like, I'm just saying, like, if you don't think it's a genocide, just say no, right? And if you think it is a genocide, like, just say yes. Like, I don't understand. Like, I understand the political reason why you have to be wiffly waffly on issues, but I think that like that exact scenario, like, oh, like, is it a genocide? The reason Bernie gets asked every single fucking time, is it a genocide, is because he just won't. He's never actually answered that question. I agree that the purity testing of the left is like ridiculous to a certain extent, and people should be a little bit charitable. Like, I think like maybe the best way, I can't remember who the video was that I was watching, but I think the best way to criticize Bernie would be like somebody who's like extreme left, like criticizing Bernie. I saw a video where like essentially the thesis of the video was something like, look, like, Bernie is a good guy. I really like Bernie. I just think that, he does represent this kind of like liberal Zionism that I think is toxic. And, he wasn't saying Bernie's just a fucking sellout. He's just as bad as Netanyahu. Like, he was actually engaging in what I think to be like an extreme left opinion, but also not like totally insane vitriolic rhetoric, right? I just, when I talk to, this is why I try to separate like people on the ground versus people in the media, that like I have a lot of pro-Palestinian like activist friends, and when I talk to them about people like Bernie and AOC, they would say something similarly nuanced, where it's like, yeah, I mean, I think it's bullshit that AOC and Bernie do this, that, or the other, but like obviously I'd be ecstatic to be able to vote for them for president over like a Biden or a Joe Manchin or like whoever, like moderate Democrat, generic Dem kind of person, right? And so, it's like when Mondani ran for mayor, right? You did see a few people who would protest him and would say he's a sellout for working with AOC and stuff like that, like actually existing people that would say that. But it seems like of the actually existing people that like were his activist base and like people that he worked with and, like the people who supported him, like he did have like a broad base of support that wasn't generally deranged on this issue. And so, the media figures are definitely, annoying about that issue, and, they can be kind of like you said, like very purity testy, but I don't know. I mean, I just, until I start like seeing that translate into, I guess, like big swings in election outcomes, it's just hard for me to say like anything other than like, yeah, it's just kind of like annoying, I guess.
Like if you saw more compelling evidence that these narratives from like the far left alt media spaces are actually producing like a loss of turnout to a point where like Dems would have otherwise won, right? Like that kind of thing is what you want to see.
Well, yeah, I would. I mean, I'm not trying to. That's kind of impossible evidence to gather, right? This is all conjecture because there's no like forensic, like this is the proportion of votes Dems lost because of ML media figures, right? But I mean, we can look at some proxies that are like, how many votes did Jill Stein get? It's like, okay, well, some kind of trivially low amount, right?
But Jill Stein's obviously not like, because I think the kind of people who are even your Crystal and Kyle, or like more specifically people like Hassan and all that, my worry isn't those people who would definitely prefer Democrats and would live better under Democrats. It's not them voting for Jill Stein. It's them not turning out at all. I think that's the thing. But those are the numbers that are harder to prove, right?
Yeah, that's right. And I mean, it seemed like, but then it's like, how do you link the lack of turnout? Because it's clear that a lot of Biden voters in 2020 didn't vote for Harris in 2024. I think the number was like about 10 million for the numbers that I calculated, right? But at the same time that's true, the polling of like people who identify as socialists seems pretty consistent in that, well, of people who identify as socialists, something like 90% of them voted for Kamala Harris in 2024, right? And so I just, it's hard for me to, given that that's true, it's just very hard for me to link, these kind of alt-left media figures with some kind of like serious depression and turnout. But like I said, I mean, like, I feel like we agree on all the actual descriptions here that, I think that this kind of left-wing alt media that you're describing is very purity testy. They're very kind of like, I think their electoral strategy clearly just doesn't work. Like, Brianna Joy Gray has contributed exactly nothing to American policy by supporting the Green Party. Everyone who's ever voted for the Green Party has contributed exactly nothing to American policy at all. Dems don't Dems just simply don't shift left because you vote for the Green Party. Dems shift left when DSA socialists win Democratic primaries. Like, that seems to be much more likely to shift the Dems to the left. So the electoral strategy is bankrupt for electoralists, but like anti-Dem leftists. And then for the anti-Dem, anti-electoralist leftists, it's like, well, they're almost like necessarily irrelevant, right? Because they're not even voting, right? So like, what the fuck? Like, they're like closed to the potential of the election, I guess, because they don't even vote in the first place, right?
Yeah, I don't know. That's, and again, when it comes to data, like, that might be a different question. I find it just, again, I'm just being intuitive. I'm just being soy intuitive, but I just find it hard to believe that like you can have this media sphere, which is, okay, let's face it, it's growing. Like, alt media is never going away. It's growing.
Yeah,
It's
I totally agree.
constantly
No,
on
but
the
that's
up.
Lonerbox. I just be clear, like, I totally buy. Like, I think it's sensible to say that, yeah, like, you might expect like in 10 years that as Zoomers become in their 30s and Gen Alpha are like voting in large numbers, that these people might grow significantly, and so that is kind of a risk. And I guess with the Vanguard specifically, I don't think they're particularly, I guess, like, I mean, I'm not relevant either, like, Vanguard's not very relevant. I'm not either. But like, with regard to like people like Hassan, like, yeah, I think, okay, for instance, like, there was like this, like, he goes and gets an interview from NPR, and the NPR guys kind of allow him to get away with saying like, oh, I'm just like a progressive. And it's like, bro, like, no, like, that's crazy. Like, if I was talking to Hassan, I would not allow him to get away with being like, I'm just a progressive. It's like, no, Hassan, like, don't be a pussy. Like, you're a fucking super left-wing socialist. Just say it with your chest, and let's talk about what you said about re-education camps, and kind of at least, give you the opportunity to clarify some things. Like, stuff like that is super duper wild, right?
And to be clear, he didn't say camps. He said they would happen in very nice places with with regular old dudes. Wait, hang on, Spider. Wait.
But that's a criticism. I think that at least all I was going to say was like, I think that's a very sensible criticism by magnitude for those platforms, because that's like establishment media, not like literally giving like a softball interview to Hassan, which, I mean, I wouldn't do that personally. Like, if I was talking to Hassan, like, again, I'd at least make it a point to draw a stark contrast of how we tend to interact and like work within these spaces. Sorry, I interrupted whoever else was trying to talk.
Oh, no, I just wanted to, I guess there's maybe one other thing that I'm pretty sure we agree on, but just double check, is that, yeah, like, there is going to be there is like the potential of this big like future problem coming up where you have this like space where Trump can go on to Rogan and all these other like brown nose people who will support the party, even often despite disagreements on a few key issues, but he'll get his fair share from media that are going to vote for him. Whereas the alt media, even if they do vote Dem, are going to spend 364 days dragging the Dems. And also, I think this also results in confused messaging as well. I think listening to Harris answer questions, she just sounded so fucking scared of her own shadow when she was talking, right? Like it sounded like she was scared to make the right wingers think she was too progressive, but she also definitely looked like she was like treading lightly with left wingers as well when she was answering this. Like, and that does leave you a problem where you kind of feel like you're beset on all sides. And the more the left wing alt media space grows, like this, it's unsustainable. It's unsustainable to have people who, even if they vote Dems, just hamstring them for the entire year, bar one day when they're asked, who's the lesser of two evils? Yeah.
Right, yeah. People say they like generic Democrat much more than they actually do when they're presented with someone trying to be generic Democrat.
Yeah.
Right. Like people, they want to at least see like some, some like noticeable personality and like some genuine kind of quirks and stuff. And that's one reason why I've always said that. Like I think one of the appeals of Bernie is that even though Bernie like is like very much just a very risless, grouchy old man, he is just, it's like kind of endearing that he's just willing to just be that way. Like he's just an angry old man talking about socialism all the time. And that's just who he is. It's who he's always been. You can find clips of him when he's like 40 years old doing the same shit. And that's very endearing. So I think, the Democrats, I mean, like I've said before openly that although I prefer AOC and like I'd want AOC to be the nominee in 2028 and not more moderate Democrats, I've said that in terms of like just purely maximizing your electoral outcomes, I think that based on all of the information I've learned about the sort of post-mortem of 2024, that's something like a John Ossoff with a tilt progressive platform would maybe be like perfectly optimal, right? Even though obviously he's not a very progressive person himself, but that probably won't happen, and it's going to be like imperfect overall. And I'm sure that when 2028 rolls around, we're going to have all the same debates that we typically have with these people. I mean, every time there's a presidential election, like these people go on platforms and try to defend the idea of not voting for the Democrat, and they get throttled by people like you and me and like Pisco, and just like every single time that this happens, like it's a complete debate, and I feel like it's a pretty incoherent electoral strategy every time. So
okay, Spider, you had something to say?
So I have a couple questions again. So this is my first question. Wait, Econ, are you a communist socialist?
I'm a socialist at this point in my life. Yeah.
Tight shit. First question is, well, this is for both of you. So who would you pick, Lonerbox, Trump or Hassan for president? Who would you choose?
It's a fucking dumb question. I don't know. There's so many.
That's not a dumb question. It's a fucking question.
It is a dumb question because there are so many potential things you'd have to consider about like what society look like when we've got 50% of the population voting for fucking Hassan. I don't know if that means we're gonna get like Hassan for 2 years and then there's a coup and fucking Stalin comes in.
All right, fine. If the majority, if Hassan Piker, right, the Turkish white motherfucker, got in president, okay, if he became president, what the fuck? What do you think? Like, what do you think will happen? Like, you think,
I think I'm probably I think ideologically at the root, I think I'm probably a bit more scared of Hassan than I am of Trump. Yeah, I think when Trump's done, he's done. He's gonna go. They're gonna shit themselves about who to replace him because there's no foundational ideology for anyone to really grasp to. But with Hassan, if he becomes president and he doesn't deliver, then there's going to be what happens to socialists. The more crazy you are, the more extreme radical left you are, the better. Hassan is just like the stepping stone to fucking Stalin or Pat Empanada, I guess. Yeah.
I personally disagree because because I spoke to other people. I think Hassan is just so goddamn retarded. Okay, like I think he'll probably be like another Zoran or like a Bernie, bro. I think he's too goddamn dumb, and I think he'd be so goddamn cucked into like pushing like anything like radical shit that he says. You know what I mean? Like re-educational camps.
Do you feel the same about people who elevate Hassan? About the people he encourages in his audience? Yeah, the like the kind of people
Rush?
who no, the kind of people who would be in his cabinet, for example, or the kind of people that would be sitting and waiting to take over the reins when he fails.
Then if fucking Bad Bernardo wasn't like fucking the fucking defense attorney or fucking like Secretary of State or whatever the fuck, I'll honestly put myself in the fucking gulag, then let Hassan become president.
But do you know who will be in the gulag with you? Hassan will go in the gulag. Like these guys turn on each other, and Hassan, for the amount of retarded shit that he says, and all the opulence, and all the fucking times where he's like compromised what they call like the true socialist principles to appeal to mainstream and all that, like, and for his career, yeah, like he'll be right there with you. He'll be turning big rocks into little rocks, right next to you.
Wait, Econ, you said Hassan over Trump, right? Correct.
Hassan over Trump. Yeah. I mean, I think honestly, it is a kind of a tough choice, but I do happen to think that even under both analysis, like both frameworks, where it's like Hassan, where he could do whatever he wanted, Trump versus if he could do whatever he wanted, or Hassan in the real like constrained political world versus Trump in the real constrained political world. I think honestly in both circumstances, like I do think Hassan would be better than Trump, because I think that Trump, like, I guess I think that in a very fundamental sense, like Trump is just a more evil person than Hassan, and so that's kind of where I'm coming from in that. And like I think
Hassan
really...
would try. He'd try the one phone call with Israel. It wouldn't work, and then he would just get bored. He wouldn't actually try to send American troops to invade the country, right?
So is this hypothetical means like if Hassan had like the same like,
Are you there, or did I cut out? What's going on?
Okay, yeah, I thought it was me that cut out because I'm on my phone. It must have been him. But that's kind of my thought. I think that Hassan, and I don't know, like Lonerbox, if you would disagree with this. Like, I think that when I talk to a lot of Tankies, like when I'm able to talk to Tankies, like you had that conversation with non-smoker like a month ago or something like that, right? And
yeah.
Like when I talk to non-smoker, I don't get the sense that he's literally an evil person, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I take it that he just has, it's like talking to a libertarian. Like a lot of libertarians aren't evil, but it's just like two ships in the night. Like we just clearly we've taken radically different paths in terms of how we think we need to solve the solutions in the world. But like I've never spoken to a Nazi and thought this person's not evil, they're just a Nazi. It's like no, like this person's evil, Yeah,
I know what you mean. Yeah,
like
I know what you mean, and I think there's also the issue that for Hassan, and I said this on Twitter, like Hassan doesn't want a revolution. Okay, that would inconvenience him so much. Like, can you imagine the fucking uncertainty of of life with a revolution? Like, how does he know that some fucking
he wouldn't be able to buy his designer fucking clothes anymore? Like,
he would. Yeah, and like he would absolutely be fucking cooed by his own, because of the liberal concessions that he's made over the years. And this has happened. People in the Soviet Union were fucking purged for far less than any active potential like ideological treachery that Hassan has done a million times over. So that's why I'm not so much worried about him as a person. And like Trump is obviously like to me like a more evil person. It's just like it's what Hassan would bring up with him that maybe worries me more. Yeah.
I guess so. But then again, like you would say, I mean, like look at Trump, right? Like I think if Stephen Miller was president, we'd have some kind of Holocaust if Stephen Miller was president.
Yeah,
obviously he's Jewish. Like I don't know that the Jews would be Holocausted again, but like Stephen Miller is about as crazy as any Hassan orbiter, if you ask me.
You're right, but Miller and anyone who is crazy that Trump brings up with him is going to have a massive problem in the sense that they are not going to be able to fill Trump's boots as easily as a more radical socialist would fill Hassan's, because for Hassan, there's the foundational ideology, there's socialism. And someone can say, Hassan wasn't like as good a socialist as I am, I'm going to come in and do it better. And that's why I feel like Stephen Miller following a Trump presidency, I think to me is less likely than someone like Mike from PA following a Hassan presidency, because...
I don't know, but I don't know if I agree with that though, because I think that, I mean, this is obviously highly like entirely an absurd discussion, but like I just think like at the same time though, you have to think that that's kind of a snake eating its own tail, right? That like the left, I mean, we talked about it, right? 100 years ago, like the Australian Labor Party was like, we're not the Bolshevists, we're totally different. And like when you look at the history of basically all of these socialist movements across time and memoriam, you see like really large just internal disputes, and obviously they settle on governments a lot of the times eventually, right? But like, you know, the idea that like Mike from PA would be able to be like, you know, guys, I'm basically Hassan 2.0. I'm like the better Hassan Pikerist, right? Who's going to do like actual like socialism with Piker characteristics, right? It's like these movements are almost like you said, like they're like structurally unstable. Like I don't know that you could hold together any kind of coalition of like American kind of like antagonistic leftists, right?
Yeah, but okay, wait. Talking about evil. Obviously, quite a lot of evil in the world is done by people who think they're doing good and can maybe even argue quite well that what they're doing is good. Like,
Of course,
the
yeah.
prospect of, remember, I don't think it's memes. Hassan genuinely believes that Israel is the modern Fourth Reich and is committing a Holocaust in Gaza.
Yeah.
If he becomes president and he's got the power to like launch some fucking B2s over Tel Aviv to stop the Holocaust, like, you think he wouldn't do that? Like, I don't know. I think he's more likely to do it. And if he doesn't, the amount of pressure he would get from his own to do it, like his voters, because that's what he's gassed up for the last fucking.
Wait, but I
long.
thought you said earlier. You thought he wouldn't actually invade Israel.
Yeah, I don't know, because like I feel it's difficult because so much of it is like branding. But I feel like he'd be at a point where maybe whether he believes it or not, he's put his voter base expects that from him, like his support base expects that from him, because that's the message he's given. So just because he doesn't follow his own rhetoric to its logical conclusion, his followers will. And that, yeah, I don't know what would happen there, or just like someone whispering in his ear. He even tweeted it, so I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, like
no, but don't get me wrong. Like I think that, like, again, I think in both scenarios, it's very scary, right? Like I remember, I think it was the last Live and Learn episode. Like I mentioned to Pisco, because he's Peruvian, that like Peru literally had they literally had an election like this where they had I think the name is like Fujimori, which is essentially like a fascist political family in Peru, and I think her name was Kiko Fujimori. She was running as the fascist right-wing candidate in the runoff against Pedro Castillo, who was like a Marxist-Leninist, like left-wing union trade activist. And I think that the ML, like Pedro Castillo, he won by like 0.5% or something. And then he takes office and immediately gets impeached because he tries to like, you know, abolish like he tries to basically be a literal tankie and like get rid of Congress or something like that, right? So he has to get thrown out of office. And so it's like, even though that happened, I would still think, like, even in hindsight, that he was a better choice than like the fascist right-wing party. And similarly, that, you know, Hassan versus Trump, that either a constrained Hassan in real existing political institutions versus a constrained Trump. Well, we see what constrained Trump looks like. It's still like terrible, right? It's awful that Trump is president, and it's awful what he's done to this country. And constrained Hassan would probably be awful too. But I think that, you know, there's probably just like a margin of issues where Hassan would be better than Trump. Like Hassan would probably not redistribute a bunch of wealth to the rich, if I had to guess. Hassan would probably not, you know, cut a bunch of welfare programs. Hassan would probably not like completely destroy the state capacity of the United States by firing hundreds of thousands of like federal employees, right? And you know, so it's like on the margin, I feel like a constrained scenario would be better for Hassan. But then, like, even ideally, it's like, okay, again, like Trump tells Stephen Miller, hey man, we got a supermajority, we can do whatever we want. Start the denaturalization, start rounding them up. Like I think that's what you'd see under an unconstrained Trump scenario. It's just kind of hard because I think that in the question, what we're seeing is Hassan that is able to say his real opinions because he's not a politician, versus Trump, who can't really say his real opinions because he is a politician. And that's just kind of difficult. It's always going to be difficult to compare because their rhetoric is differently constrained.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of why again, it's all this alt history where every parameter changes. But yeah, if you're in this current system and it's 4 years of Trump versus 4 years of Hassan, it's like, yeah, 4 years of Hassan, probably nothing would happen. Like he would just fail at implementing everything, get bored and leave. But then, yeah, it's just there's so many different ways to answer the question.
Yeah. Like I think Hassan's,
out of interest,
I guess it would also be funny to see like, because like you said, like it would be funny to see Hassan's reputation like completely collapse with like the online left because he wouldn't be able to do like essentially like, oh, it turns out you can't just do Medicare for all with an executive order. Oh, who'd have thought, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it turns out you can't just like bully every single senator to do what you want for them. Like that's actually pretty difficult, it turns out, right? I take your point on the foreign policy though, that like the president really can't dictate a substantial portion of foreign policy himself. And I guess that's the best argument that people have made about like Hassan being more disastrous than Trump is like the foreign policy implications. But I don't know. I feel like Trump's foreign policy is very disastrous.
Yeah, but what with Hassan, it's also things it's the things that you could do with executive order, right? Like the things that and that's a lot of it is military and foreign policy, right? Like he could, he supports the Russian annexation of Crimea, right? Like you just recognize it tomorrow, right? That would set a horrible precedent. And I don't know, it's also with the domestic thing as well, because I know what people are saying with the amount of shit that Trump's done domestically, but I don't know, like, would you accept like an American fucking bombing raid on Israel's major cities with B-2s in exchange for saving Social Security? Like, I don't know.
Well, right. It's like it ultimately becomes kind of a brutal utilitarian kind of calculus at a certain point, right? It's like, okay, well, like essentially like what is the real impact of either of those actions, right? And what's the probability of those actions actually being taken? It's just clearly very difficult to say. I mean, like you said, it sounded like your first instinct was to think that probably Hassan wouldn't literally invade Israel, right? And I think that's probably right as well. Like I remember talking to Tally bots over in Wick on Wick TV, and like they had said something like their expectation was that if Hassan became president, there would literally be like a Holocaust-like killing of Jews on the planet because of like he would like completely destroy Israel basically. And it's like would he? Like I really don't know. That's just not my expectation personally. Like I think that to the extent that you're a Zionist or like you really are like in support of the Israeli state or something, it's like I guess I don't think that there'd be a second Jewish Holocaust if Hassan was president. Like I guess maybe that would happen, but
it's more like what he said about what he said, like if the phone call doesn't work and the sanctions don't work because obviously Israel's still going to fight some of their enemies, then it's like, do you do the bombing to stop the Holocaust? And then, what if it happens? What if America incapacitates the IDF and then Hamas and Hezbollah and the Houthis and whatever other proxy groups decide to rush into Israel and take advantage of the situation? Like, would Hassan stop them? Probably not. But also, even domestically, right? Like, what if someone decided to fucking, what if someone decided to like go and murder their fucking landlord? And then they asked Hassan for a pardon. Like, would they get it? I don't know. Or they started like torching fucking Amazon warehouses.
Right. Well, right. But again, like with Trump, there's like, you can actually, like, he literally did pardon thousands of like literal
January 6th,
insurrectionist rioters, right? So it's like, okay, like the enemy I know versus the one I don't, I guess. Like, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, it's an interesting hypothetical, but I mean, I think it's kind of sensible to come out either way on it. But I mean, I do think that Hassan would be kind of a slight preference in that regard, but I don't know. I mean, it's kind of, I mean, obviously that's not, the actual real politics is like Trump versus moderate Democrat. It's like, okay, well, like obviously moderate Democrat is the correct answer, like 100 times out of 100. So, whatever. But how do you think the debate, have you watched the debate at this point? How do you think it went?
I'm still going through it. I hope it's not just the entire situation of you Americans struggling to separate the socialists from the fucking revolutionary dipshits. I don't know.
Wait a second. Hold on. I don't think I struggle to separate the two. Okay. Because I think I said multiple times, like, they're all part of the socialist canon. Like, if you were going to write a book about the history of socialism, it would be kind of kind of weird to just exclude the USSR and China, but like there's
Mhm.
there's differences between these groups, obviously, right?
Well, yeah, but I'm just not really seeing an evident I'm not really seeing the effort so far to make that distinction so that we can at least agree on the definitions to have a conversation. Because obviously, one version of socialist can obviously be worked with. Like, I don't think Stephen's against AOC and Bernie, but the other version definitely can't be worked with. That's what I'm trying to figure out. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that one of the issues is that we kind of waffle between. I think that Destiny and Connor kind of waffle between the two positions of like. I guess especially Connor, but Destiny as well. Maybe there's a miscommunication between the two, but it's kind of like we moved between like socialism is what people think it is, right? And then socialism is the historical understanding of socialism. And it's like, okay, well, on a historical account, it's just not clear that like the definitive understanding of socialism is essentially Marxist-Leninism. And on like the actually existing socialists of the world, well, I mean, you might disagree, like, oh, like somebody who votes for Bernie because they want a higher minimum wage and universal healthcare or something, like, well, they're not a real socialist. It's like, well, yeah, but they're saying they are. So like you either have to take that seriously or not, right? So like, it's kind of a hard, like you're either appealing to the historical understanding or you're not, right? So,
Okay. All right.
I have one question for you,
Yeah.
Lonerbox. Are you going to support Jeremy Corbyn's new political party
Probably not.
so that he can implement socialism?
Probably not. I don't know. I think going from having some pretty attractive domestic policies to whatever the fuck this is, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure Reform will be happy about it because splitting parties in the UK is not generally a good idea. But yeah, at least it's even now. Conservative Reform versus Labour versus Corbyn.
Have they come up with a name yet? I'm really curious what the name's going to be.
Don't know.
I'm so curious what
Apparently the launch was chaotic.
Just be like the Socialist Party?
What?
Do you think they're literally just going to call themselves like the Socialist Party?
I don't know. I mean, how many parties have we had in the UK that there was like the Socialist Labour Party, there was the Socialist Worker, there was the Socialist Party, the Socialist Party of Great Britain. Yeah, we've had loads. So I don't know. They're running out of space now. Whatever's not copyrighted, right?
That's true. They can just call themselves the Corbynites or something. I mean, Jeremy Corbyn's really old, honestly. He's like 80 years old, isn't he? Like, how much time does he have left?
Yeah. But it's also, Sultana's there as well. Apparently, they might call it the Left Party. It's quite broad.
Hi.
Oh.
Hi.
I have a question, though. Obviously, like, it depends, right, on the society that they're in when it comes to, like, socialist policies, right? The thing is, I feel it also has to depend on, like, the kinds of things that they support that isn't just socialist policy. Like, for example, do they have ties to, I don't know, the CCP? Do they have ties to other, like, governments that clearly are not ideal in a sense where they say they're socialist, right? And they want pretty good policies for a country. But do they have, like, do they support certain things that are clearly like beyond the pale? You know?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, like obviously there's a difference between like your kind of like I don't know, like your pro Russia like ML socialists versus your kind of dim socks, right? So
because usually like people that support like Bernie or AOC, like AOC has moderated over time. The thing is that like most people that would vote for them also like, I don't know, peddle like fucking propaganda for like actual like what are they, like one party governments. They want actual autocracy, right? So because they don't believe that like freedom of political opinions is a good thing, because clearly we can't deal with like people that are insane.
Yeah, I don't know. I think Lonerbox and I would agree with that.
I want to go back to this debate.
Okay.
We all good, guys?
All right.
right.
Well, it was good talking to Lonerbox. All right. Talk to you later, bud.
Bye
Bye.
bye.
Klux Klan.